You're watching PEG-RI TV, Rhode Island's public access channel.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Advanced Rhode Island. I'm Dan McKee, the Lieutenant Governor of Rhode Island, and each month we have a show that talks about things that we're working on in our office, whether it's municipal issues or health issues or small business issues, and that's what we're going to be focused on today, is the small business issues in the state of Rhode Island. And our theme to our office is the number 39. There's 39 cities and towns in the state of Rhode Island, and each and every one's important, and each and every person that lives in those is important to our state, and of course every single business is important in the state. Today, I'm just very, very excited the fact that we've had a tour of the 39 or more plus farms in the state of Rhode Island, and all different types of farming we're talking about, whether it's poultry, or whether it's vegetable, or whether it's oysters, and whether it's mulching or whatever it might be. And what we have here today is a panel that represents several of the farms that we have visited in over the last couple of years. So the way it's happening today, I'm going to ask, are we all right with that, Bob?
I don't know what's going on.
Huh? Okay. Well, we're going to keep on plugging through it. But anyways, today we're very, very pleased to not only to have Steve Boyle here from the Cranston Chamber to host it, and this is our 4th show with a live audience in the state of Rhode Island over the last year, and it's been about this will be our 12th show, I believe, or 13th show on this issue. So it's really great, Steve, to have you here and to have the Chamber help us co-sponsor this event, and of course Jonathan Confreda, who at the Confreda's Farm here, that is just hosting this event. How special is that we're in one of the places that you probably grew some of the vegetables in the last
Yep.
12 months, right? So the way we're going to work it is I'm going to have Steve kind of introduce himself, and then we're going to go around right down the line, and everybody's going to kind of give him a little bit of flavor of the type of business that they run, and of course I'll put my 2 cents in as well, because what an experience it was. But Steve, please introduce yourself and let everybody know about the Chamber, and thank you so much again for co-hosting this with us.
Thank you very much, Governor. I'm Steve Boyle. I'm the president of the Cranston Chamber of Commerce, and I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for sponsoring these events throughout the state. We have a very close relationship with the Lieutenant Governor from the Small Business Advisory Council, and I also want to thank Confreda as well. They've been a long-time member of the Chamber, so we appreciate that. Cranston is obviously growing. I think everybody who looks around here can see the businesses are coming here. Garden City is obviously booming, but I think it's important that we also focus on other types of industry as well, particularly with the farms, and it's very important that we continue to maintain those farms. The Cranston Chamber, just so you know, has been open since 1929. It used to be the Cranston Businessmen's Association, and once they realized the men couldn't run it, they had to change the name 2 years later, so to the Cranston Chamber of Commerce. But we're growing, and we're looking forward to partnerships. We try to be a very practical chamber, where we do a lot of stuff with the healthcare industry. I'm the co-chair of the Health Insurance Commissioner, and I sit on the Health Services Council. I'm also chair of the Ratepayers Advisory Board, and near and dear to our heart is the electricity cost. So we're going to be advocating for businesses going forward. So thank you again.
Well, thanks, Steve, and that's great. Thank you so much for being hosting, and yes, give them a little round of applause, because without the chambers, we're not able to kind of connect in with the business community in the way that we have. But Jonathan, tell us a little bit about your business. As second, third generation, right? And fourth generation. Wow. And you've been really what a great acreage here that you wouldn't believe. People when I visited here, I didn't believe how much I saw here and how much activity was going on. So tell us a little bit about your family business.
All right. My name is Jonathan Confreda. I'm a 4th generation here at Confreda Farms. We grow all sorts of different vegetables. We're about 450 acres, half of which is about corn, and then we grow peppers, tomatoes, cucumbers, all sorts of squashes, but mainly just fresh produce. We also have our own wholesale garden center. We have probably about 25 to 30 greenhouses, and we grow spring annuals, vegetables, all sorts of garden center stuff. We also have a retail stand and a retail garden center where we sell prepared foods, deli, dairy, produce, grocery. It's basically almost like a mini grocery store. And then on top of all that, we have our fall festival, which is the pick your own pumpkins, a corn maze. It's about, I want to say it's 8 acres altogether, about 2 miles of paths. As well as this year we got a brand new animal barnyard as well for that. And then we also have our haunted attraction in the fall, which brings all sorts of people, a haunted hayride and corn maze. So that's pretty much everything that Confrida's is.
A lot of work, and I bought some honey too, because you got a little honey thing going on here, right?
We recently got our own honeybees.
Yes.
So we're just starting to produce our honey this year, and that's been really popular with us.
Beautiful. So we're in Cranston right now, but we were all around the state, and Charlestown was one of the places that we visited, right, Jane? So tell us a little bit about your the operation that we saw there, and I had some nice strawberries too when I was down there, I believe, and I got a nice hat too from that I wore around different areas of the country when I traveled with the Lieutenant Governor. So tell us about your story.
Thanks so much for coming out to the farm too. I'm from Earth Care Farm in Charlestown, Rhode Island, and I'm second generation now. My father started it in the 70s, and we raise strawberries, garlic, rhubarb, and we have Black Angus cattle. But our main thing is that we make compost. We take in kind of the best scraps from all the industries in Rhode Island and turn them into black gold, our compost. And it's kind of it's a really cool thing to take a tour of and see. And we're small compared to Confrida. We're 27 acres, and every inch of it is utilized for all different types of farming activity. And that's just a little bit.
Yeah, and you do a little bit of lessons on cooking, or what?
We have we teach gardening classes.
I'm sorry,
and,
gardening.
Yep,
yes. Yes.
And some farm classes as well, garlic growing, and once a month we meet and have discussions on those classes.
Yeah, well, that was very interesting in terms of the way that you opened up, as many of the farms have, to the public, and starting to really interact with them on services that you provide and education that you're giving people throughout the state of Rhode Island and beyond, right?
I love the pick your own portion of the farm as well, pick your own strawberries.
Yeah, and we were at a number of them. We didn't limit ourselves to just the farming side of it that traditionally is talked about. We also got out to some oyster farms, and we went with the Bar Harbor, the harbor master in Bristol, and visited, and then we paid a personal visit down to Jeff's place right down in Westerly. So Jeff, tell us a little bit about what's going on down there. It was very impressive, and we really enjoyed the day that we had, going right out into the water and getting our hands right into the sand and pulling out the things that you're farming. So tell us about the things you're farming.
Hi, I'm Jeff Gardner. I'm probably the oldest shellfish farmer in Rhode Island. I grow mostly Watch Hill oysters, but I also grow clams, hardshell clams, quahogs, and sometimes bay scallops. It was great having Lieutenant Governor and his wife and staff come out. We took a nice boat ride, went out and saw what oyster farm, which is basically what we do, how it works. I've been doing it since 1990. So I get introduced sometimes as a, quote, pioneer of the industry. The way we grow our oysters, I started with 1.5 acres. I went to 3 acres, went to 7 acres. Right now I'm up to 12 acres. That's a small farm in some scale, but it's one of the largest farms in Rhode Island. First started doing this 20 some odd years ago. It was NIMBY, not in my backyard. We had a lot of resistance because we're farming in a city, and the water is occupied by a lot of other uses. Right now, with the restaurant scene that's going on around the country, especially in South County and oyster bars, we're accepted a lot more by the local kayakers, etc. I grow our oysters in off-bottom trays. They never touch the bottom. We start with oysters that are about the size of your pinky nail. They take about 2 years to grow to be approximately 3 inches, which is what our restaurants want. I've had people from Canada, farmers down, they take 5 to 7 years. It's challenging, it's outside, it's scientific, and it's hard work. It's also very rewarding. And on my little resume I have, which I'm not going to read, It seems we have a proven success plan creating green living wage jobs, and would like very much to continue our journey. We have my wife and I have one child. Our son is 29. He's coming back next year from Chicago to start running the farm. And we do have a farm stand in front of the house for, he was 11 years old when he started it. It still thrives on Saturdays only. Tom's Clam Stand. Anybody in Westerly on Saturdays might see those little homemade signs with a clam with its thumb up. That's in front of our house, and it's terrific.
So I'm glad you mentioned the jobs, right? This is one of the things that we wanted to let people know is that farming is a great, vocation, but it also creates an economy for the state, and jobs are produced because of the efforts that Jeff and everybody here on the panel, the work that they do. So thank you, Jeff. And one of the things I wanted to let you know is as you're talking, we're going to kind of impose a little picture that we took so that people can kind of see as you tell your story, that they can actually see a piece of the story that you're telling and how we actually experience firsthand the great work that's going on. So Matt, tell us about the Christmas Tree Farm. What a great visit we had there, and tell us about the solar that's going on and the other efforts that's happening right down in West Greenwich, right? We're
Absolutely.
in West Greenwich. So.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you very much for inviting us here. My name is Matthew Layden, part of Big John's Christmas Tree Farm. I'm third generation. My grandfather actually started with my father. Went up to the Providence Market, bought, I believe it was 6 to 12 Christmas trees, sold them on his front doorstep, and we now have 130 acres of Christmas trees, or 130 acres of land, of which about 70 to 80 are planted. And as the Lieutenant Governor mentioned, we've kind of diversified a little bit. About 20 years ago, my brother started with a Halloween hayride. It's been very, very successful. We've since added what he calls the zombie paintball. So if you get a chance to come out and shoot some zombies with us. We've also added 2 megawatts of solar power. We've worked with some gentlemen that put a contract through National Grid. We have about 12 to 15 acres that are strictly solar. We don't own the power, it goes back to the grid. So we believe in agribusiness, and we're diversifying in different ways so that the farm, which is our basis, the 130 acres, is utilized in a number of different fashions. So my brother, my father, myself, and now the fourth generation, my children and his children are also working there. So
one of the things that came up over and over again was the generational issue. And how difficult it is, and we're going to talk about that in the next round when we ask, what's going on okay and what's challenging. But one of the things takeaways that we got was the fact that it's difficult to hold on to land.
Absolutely.
As a farmer, and it's difficult to acquire land. And so we saw some instances where there was partnerships going on between land trust and conservation with farms, and whether it's in the Tulip Farm out in Johnston or Pat's Pastures down in East Greenwich. We think those are really important things that we need to make sure that we create these partnerships. As a former mayor, we have open space in our town, and we need to find ways to partner in with farmers that are running the business so that we can use that land. Don, and talk about Cumberland, right? You have some roots in Cumberland, right?
Yes.
And but we got to go pay a visit to your farm, which is poultry, right out in Johnston. And unless you actually saw it, and we're going to show some pictures hopefully, but you're talking about thousands of chickens and thousands of turkeys that you're raising every day, and you gave me an astronomical number of how many eggs a day that you're producing. So give us a little overview of what's happening at Buffoni's.
Okay, at Buffoni's Poultry Farm we have different business segments. One is our egg production. We have about 6,000 laying hens, and we produce about 360 dozens of eggs a day. We supply a lot of markets throughout Providence and around the state, as well as restaurants. We also have another segment of our business is our broiler production, which is the meat chickens that we raise. We have approximately 15,000 at any one time at different stages of growth. We have like 5 flocks growing. And the goal is to partner with a lot of the restaurants, and they want a consistent size of bird. And we have you know, it's a real challenge because there is a gap between each time that we get chicks in, and that's very difficult for us. We have also 1,200 turkeys that we raise for Thanksgiving, which is also another challenge because we take just about every order before we process the first one. And you know, and you're
buying a turkey, it's a good place to order a turkey.
Yes,
when do you
right
make
now,
that?
right
When do
now,
you
yeah,
make that?
we're in there weighing them and trying to figure out what we have, and the phone's ringing. All right, how many 20-pounders can we sell? So yeah, it's a lot of hard work. You know, it's if you're dealing with livestock, you have to be very attentive. You know, work needs to be done when it needs to be done. In other words, if a waterer breaks and starts to wet the bedding, and you can't just say, well, I got something to do tonight, I'll do it tomorrow. Those animals won't be happy, they won't grow right. So a lot of it is doing it when it needs to be done, and that's key to our success.
The day we visited too, Don, you were you were preparing chickens to be sold, and the inspector was there as well, because you have to meet certain guidelines and safety guidelines as you produce these meats, right?
Right, and that is like another big segment of our business is our processing facility. We work with the USDA to set up the facility, and we process birds from a lot of farms around the state and from Massachusetts. We even have one person that takes a ferry over from Long Island into New London, and we process the birds so that they're inspected by the government, because in order to process and sell your meat to someone that's going to then resell it like a supermarket, it needs to be government inspected, and we have all procedures that every step of the way of how that product is handled in the facility. We have critical control points that we are constantly monitoring and logging the chilling of the products, and we have all sanitation procedures that are followed.
So the regulation's important. We just want to make sure we don't over-regulate. But what I saw there when I visited was just a surprise to me to see how many turkeys and chickens you had in that one small space, and of course you do retail as well. So it was a great visit, Don. Kate, give us a little overview of Steer Farm.
Sure.
The Steer family farm,
So
right?
I run Deep Roots Farm, and the name comes from the fact that I am the 7th generation to work on the farm. My dad is standing in the back, and he's taken care of the farm for his whole life. So our family came to the farm in the late 1700s, and they were the most creative, resourceful people I've ever heard of. They dammed the river and built a water-powered sawmill, which operated until the 1950s. They also generated Chepachet's electricity in the early 1900s. The big power companies wouldn't come out, so they lit the first light bulb in town and powered about 100 houses. And then there was also a dairy farm that ran until the 1970s, when Big Dairy came and put all the little guys out of business. So my dad actually milked 30 cows by himself while he was still in high school for the whole last summer that the farm was in business. So I grew up on the farm and kind of heard from my dad and my grandpa that you couldn't make a living off farming anymore. So I moved to Silicon Valley and worked in commercial banking. And I kind of just saw all these people around me not really living their lives. They were going through the motions and hated their jobs, and they were waiting for the weekends, but then they were just watching TV all weekend, and I didn't want to live my life like that. And I was always on the phone with my dad. I was obsessed with Joel Salatin at Polyface Farm and how he had revived his farm using animals on the land and rotating them. And so I guess I kind of finally decided that I needed to stop bugging my dad from 3,000 miles away and move home. So I interned at Polyface Farm last summer, moved home in September of 2016, 2016 and have spent the last year, 2 years, 2 and a half years, 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 2 years, 2 and a half years
building fences around our pastures and cleaning out the barns. And I have beef cows, pigs, meat chickens, and laying hens that I rotationally graze around the farm. So I direct market beef, pork, chicken, and eggs through farmers markets, a couple of vegetable CSAs, and then to some local restaurants.
Well, it was a great visit to go to your family's farm there, and you do a little. You move the fences every day, right? And because you're a grass-fed type of beef, right? Mm-hmm. And just explain what that is. Rotational.
Yeah. So basically the purpose of this type of farming is to put the animals to work for you and use them to regenerate the land instead of ruin it like most industrial farms do with animals. The cows are 100% grass-fed, and they go first into the fields, and the idea is to just give them enough grass for one day and then move them to the next place so they're not trampling it instead of eating it. And then the chickens come next, and they spread apart all the cow patties. They eat the bugs, which cuts down on bugs and cuts down on my feed bills. And it's really just like watching magic happen to see the fields come back to life. Just in the past year, there's been just huge improvements in the amount of grass and forage that's growing. So. And then the pigs are, they're like free plows. So I've been putting them on the edges of a couple of the pastures that have grown in, and they're plowing everything up and eating all the roots, and we'll fence that part of the pasture in next year when they have turned it into pasture.
And so it was just such a great experience to see Kate working this farm, and really like a one-woman show almost to a certain degree, with some assistance with your dad and that type of thing. But it was fantastic, and also your uncle, your family got involved with a little solar too, right? I mean, so we've seen people use their land in a way that is going to make a lot of sense, and very resourceful. The farmers are very resourceful in terms of trying to make to keep the businesses going. And what's happening is there's a resurgence in this farm-to-table type of approach in the state of Rhode Island. And that's what we're trying to really endorse. So one of the things that I was able to do was to put a journal together of every visit that I had, and I got the stories down of everybody's different stories that they shared with me, and we were talking about things that were going good and things that could be going better. And I know on the early one of the examples that we had was that there was some concern about the Food Safety Modernization Act, and we were down in, whether we were down in South County or wherever, and so we've done a lot of investigation on that and actually tried to insert a little bit of common sense into the process as it goes forward. Again, we need regulation, we need to be safe, but at the moment, at least there's a delay on that. I think the farmers should know there's a delay on that to the spring of 2019, as opposed to having it be adopted next year. And so we'll continue to work on trying to make sure when they put in these federal regulations or state regulations, we want to make sure that it's done in a timely way and a common sense way. So Jonathan, give me, give a quick overview. We may go a little over, Steve, so we might not get as much the halftime in the air. But these stories are great, and to have 7 people here, this is six people here and yourself is just wonderful. So Jonathan, give me a little overview of what's happening that's really working for you in terms, and then if you want to share maybe some of the challenges, and as I'll kind of chime in as I just did about keeping the farms and the family as being a challenge, and we need to figure out ways to kind of make that work. Whether it's we had in our town we had different farm tax incentives, so that if people were wanted to keep their farm in a farming way, we made sure that they could afford to do that. Give us a little overview of what's going well and what could be done better.
Okay. Well, for what's going well, I had no idea that the Food Safety Modernization Act was going to get postponed like that.
So that's good, right?
That's fantastic.
I don't know if we had anything to do with it, but we certainly were making some phone calls.
I had no idea. That was, we have to be compliant pretty soon. We were supposed to be compliant in January, so that's kind of been looming ahead. Once we get past the fall, we got to make sure we nail that. So if that's going to be postponed, then that's fantastic news for us. For what's going well for us, the fact that the farm-to-table movement is as strong as it is, especially in Rhode Island, is such a fantastic thing for all the farmers in Rhode Island. Coming in at being 22 years old and seeing agriculture, I kind of started right off when that movement was happening, that's when I really got involved with the business side of the company. And I have no idea what it was like really before then, but I couldn't imagine it would be sustainable for a lot of farmers. To see that movement as strong as it is right now, and the amount of interest that's in local, it's fantastic. There's so many grocery stores that prefer to just buy direct from farms, which really helps us a lot instead of selling it to a distributor or selling it to an open market. That's huge for us on the farming side of things. For the direct marketing purposes, the fact that people are willing to go out of their day and come to farm markets and basically just support us, that's fantastic news for us. There's a lot of interest in people coming out to farms and seeing animals, and actually spending an afternoon here, spending a Sunday here with us because we have the prepared foods and all that. They'll come here, get lunch, go see the animals, and make kind of the day out of it, which is, it's awesome that people would actually be willing to spend a day going out to a business and just to see that, almost that entertainment piece. I couldn't imagine having that before, but for what's going not so well, I can't really complain about the weather.
That's good this year.
Yeah, this year the spring was a little bit rough, obviously, and I think every farmer in the audience completely understands that. The FSMA thing is really the big thing that's looming ahead. It's scary for the operation that we're in right now. The amount of money we would need to get everything up to date, to get everything compliant with FSMA, it's a scary amount, and it's something new for us that we're not familiar with. So that's really the one big scare ahead of us.
Yeah, so we're going to do our best to keep in touch with our senators and our reps and kind of find ways to help alleviate some of the concerns that have been expressed by yourself and other farmers. But thank you so again for hosting here today. I wanted to go to Jane and kind of give a little overview. What's going pretty well?
Yeah.
I mean, we saw some unbelievable equipment there that you were mixing that black gold, as you referred to it.
Yeah, it's quite the operation. I would encourage people to come check it out.
Yes.
It's just a beautiful example of turning something wasteful into something that is of such a higher value and for the earth as well as people. But what's going well there is the state actually has been very helpful with us in, we got some solar grants to put panels at our farm. So we've started the installation process, and our farm should be 100% solar powered by the end of this year, which was really helpful and wouldn't have been possible without the 3 grants we got between the USDA and then 2 from the state. And so that's been wonderful. And then kind of, I think a struggle for all of the farms is that passing on to the next generation, just how to do that, the constructs of it, the legal fees can be kind of daunting, and we all wear so many hats every day. To add that extra one on that can be expensive and time consuming has been a challenge. And this year we found Land for Good and the Conservation Law Foundation, which have really helped us navigate that system and get a good succession plan in place for our family. And that's been just a huge burden off our backs to know what's going to happen for that next generation, which is me and my son and my family, and I'm very appreciative of that.
You're doing a little addition onto your property though, right?
Yeah.
To keep your mom and dad close, right?
Yep, we're all very close over there, and it's a beautiful thing. It just feels like the natural progression. And again, to kind of just bring about more that connection to local agriculture really has been helpful, and I think so many people are wanting to reconnect with the land and just figure out what this life is about and really get in there and spend a day outside in nature. It's been great for businesses, but also just great for people, and especially children. So that's what's definitely working.
Yeah, so pay a visit, right?
Yeah,
pay
definitely
a visit.
pay a
And
visit.
we are doing everything we possibly can to try to encourage people in Rhode Island to do business in Rhode Island and to support in particular the efforts that are happening in farming in the state of Rhode Island. And you're a great example of a young person that is trying to keep that dream alive, right? And you've been very creative with some of the things that you've been able to do there. But Jeff, give us a little overview of what's going pretty good and what could be done better, and
Okay.
and what can we do to help.
Couple of little silly sayings I've been saying for a long time is, how do you make a small fortune in aquaculture? You start with a large one. It looks beautiful on paper. I could sell you some beautiful swampland in Florida. If you wanted to make up some numbers, because it sounds wonderful. I appreciate everybody else here on the panel. I think we appreciate each other, because farming is hard work. It looks great in the pictures. It looks wonderful, but it's dirty, hard. You need to make it a lifestyle. It's not just a job, it's a lifestyle. You have to be able to accept that, and I think everybody here mentioned they're pretty much doing the same thing. I personally think everything's going well in my industry, which is, I'd say, oyster aquaculture, although we could go into clams, etc. I believe that Rhode Island is, the oyster farmers have surpassed the wild harvest clammers in dollars being brought into the state. We interviewed, I believe, 8 people to fill 2 jobs this year, so it's difficult. One of the big problems we have is employee issues. Finding people that realize that you are going to be dirty, you are going to have to take a shower before you go home, because you won't be allowed in the house. We have some issues with insurance, workman's comp, etc. That gets a little complicated. A gentleman over here was talking about his chickens. We also have to deal with the health department, hazard analysis at critical control points. When I started doing this 20-some years ago, it was a couple simple forms. I now have about a dozen forms I have to fill out on a daily basis when we make sales. Water temperature, it makes sense. Cooler temperatures, product temperatures, how long it takes to get to market, all of it trace backable by the Department of Health. It's wonderful to see our state agencies, DEM and CRMC particularly, working together, which is something historically that has not happened. Permitting takes a while. There's a lot of research that goes on. Most of it is effective. A fair amount of it is not necessary, but it keeps people employed at our universities, perhaps overpaid. And there are issues with things like, we had a farm visit from somebody who wrote a regulation involving us that, wow, this is my first visit to an oyster farm. I'm wondering how my regulations are working out. Cart before the horse, you know. It's like, maybe you should have come and visited us before. Great gentleman, I'm not going to tell who he was. It's a decent regulation, but sometimes we need to be looked at a little more straightforwardly. We're the jobs producer in the state. We're growing, we're creating what everybody wants, food that you can know where it comes from. Please don't buy your tilapia from China. And everybody at this table is bringing jobs to Rhode Island. So I personally think it's wonderful. I'd like to see perhaps more, and I don't know how to bring them here, but I believe everybody here is mentioning they're a generation into this, or 5 generations. I'm originally from New Jersey, and my son is going to be taking over the business in a year, and that'll be wonderful. But I'd like to see more draw from out of state so that we can continue this wonderful expansion. And we're in a perfect area for, you don't need a truck to go very far to sell what we have. So carbon credits, we are everything here is so good for environmentally, it should be continued and expanded.
Yeah, that's a good thought. And I want to just say, because we're going to continue down the line here, and we'll probably have, instead of have a half an hour, probably have 15-20 minutes when Steve takes over. But this is just too valuable of a conversation to stop. And our goal this year is to visit these businesses, in this case the farms, and now we're doing some construction sites. We're going to be doing manufacturing very shortly. We're going to do some retail, visit to every community on retail, and then some art businesses as well, some art-related businesses, and keep that flow going. But what we want from the business community as we go out and do that work, we want to hear what's going on in terms of what could be done better and what type of legislation, because our goal this year is to say, look, on the big businesses, and we hear it all the time, and again, as a mayor, I've said this before, I worked with CVS on probably the largest expansion in the state of Rhode Island in the last 10 years, over 600,000 square feet, 1,000 jobs. And that was important, but what are we doing for the small businesses? So if we're willing to create incentives for big business, we should be able to get an argument as we cross different industries, whether it's manufacturing, farming, and so on, to get the small business a piece of the pie. So our idea is to make that argument, Jeff, and then also to put together a legislative package on the things that we're hearing, those simple to fix type of pieces of legislation, not the ones that are, the miracle ones, or the home run or the grand slam home run. We're trying to identify those singles and doubles and get out there and change the the way that we operate, so the small businesses feel as though they have a voice in that things are happening well. So you sharing those stories is just great. Matt, give us a little overview of the Christmas tree farming business and what's going on and what's going really good and what could be done better.
Overall, I'd say things are very positive. Unlike the other farmers, both on the panel and in the audience, we work all year for approximately a 30-day revenue generation process. When you plant a Christmas tree, people think you plant a Christmas tree and it grows in a matter of years. We plant a 3 to 5 year old Christmas tree that's no more than 6 inches tall, and it literally sits in the ground for another 10 plus years. But it requires fertilization, trimming, bug infestation. So there's a number of different things that we're susceptible to losing that tree from point A to point B. Never mind the fact that we then work all year and try to make income over 30 days. There's an article on the front page of the Providence Journal this morning. My brother was on there, and he mentions if we get a snowstorm or anything like that on one of our busier weekends, it could literally wipe us out. Thank you very much.
Take a picture. There we go. Okay.
And likewise in our other businesses. The Halloween Hayride, we are gearing up right now. We open up in a week from now. So it's prime time for us. We follow that up with Christmas time. So things are very positive. My brother is out tonight with approximately 100 people that are looking for jobs. Some of them are from high school. Some of them are older adults that have retired looking for extra income. But we will hire over 100 people on our Halloween Hayride this year, which is just fabulous. Never mind what we do with our zombie paintball.
Yes. But as Jonathan says, you're subject to weather.
We are, absolutely.
Weather is a factor.
And Jonathan can tell this. I was talking to one of his colleagues earlier. We lost 6 nights last year in the Halloween Hayride. That can be devastating to a business that only has income generated for 30 days.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that. And Don, give us a little overview of what's going pretty good. And for you, I know you got quite a business there, a retail business as well, not just the wholesale business, right? And
Yep.
And what could be done to help make it better?
Well, we've benefited a lot, from the farm to table movement. Like we have so many customers now that says, "Oh, I live a mile up the street and didn't even know you could come here." It's it's really built a lot, and we've benefited a lot from, like, Johnson & Wales University does the culinary students, and it was only a few years ago that they started offering these sustainability classes and really educating the younger students. And they would come out and do a tour of the facility, and then they would graduate and they would end up at a restaurant, and the next thing you know, we're getting a phone call saying, "Hey, we want to try your chicken, and we're going to do a blind taste test to find out is it worth the extra money." And they'll say every single person that works in the restaurant picked your chicken. And so, that's how we've gotten into
you're on a lot of restaurant menus too, right? Your name is
right, and a lot of it has happened through the education of these college students who are now working in these restaurants. I find that most of the restaurants we're in really are owner. The chef is the owner. The people that are really in tune with understanding the products that are going into the and not the investment people that come in and buy up these places and send in a restaurant manager to cut costs and labor, and it's all about the money at that point. So yeah, no, we've I'm happy with educating the younger kids. We've had a couple of charter schools come in, and they've come in and done a tour and then come back with ideas. We've had Moses Brown does this innovation camp in the summer, and they come out, and then at the end of it they tour a bunch of food industry places, and they have to come up with a business that they would start in the state. Nice. And I think that's the key.
While you're talking about that, when I was out in Nashville with a Lieutenant Governor meeting, which I chaired that group this year, and this summer we had Lieutenant Governors give what they've done well, and one of them was a youth entrepreneur program, which they went to the high school students. So we're going to have to circle back with you some ideas, because we're going to steal that idea with permission, and we're going to actually implement a youth entrepreneurship program, and with some scholarship money that's going to go with that to kind of continue reinforcing this idea that we need entrepreneurs, we need business owners and that type of thing, and you're a great example of that. So, and then the other thing you mentioned there, I think I'll repeat, is that there's pretty good partnerships going on with universities, especially into the farming right now, in terms of URI, and in terms, I know because I visited the sod company down there in North Kingstown. I'm going to be with them tomorrow, and they have a whole different creative strategy in how they're growing grass right now that is unique to the industry nationally. They're involved with golf courses and parks and municipal types of things. So that education connection down, I think, is very important, and we need to keep on making that work. Kate, give us a little bit overview of what's going okay and what could be done better.
Sure. So like everybody here has already said, we're so fortunate in Rhode Island to have such a supportive local food community, and that's amazing. I think the biggest challenge for small livestock farmers is probably regulations in the Department of Health. I have had it a lot easier than farmers maybe 5 years before me that were getting their licenses and permits. I moved home and started networking with farmers and heard absolute nightmare stories about people trying to get their wholesalers permits to sell to restaurants, like having to drill new wells or it taking a year to get the permit, and they only got it after they called the Department of Health 30 days in a row, and the woman said, "I'll give you your permit if you promise to never call here again." So I was prepared for battle when I went into that, and it was a pretty good process for me, so I'm really thankful for whoever has made that better. I think there's still a long way that we could go. You know, raw milk and on-farm poultry processing is something that consumers in Rhode Island really want. We're one of the only states, I think maybe out of 5 in the country, that it's still illegal to sell raw milk. And I have requests from customers all the time for it. And then Rhode Island technically participates in the federal exemption for on-farm poultry processing for up to 1,000 birds, I think, but I've heard that every time somebody applies for it, they just get denied, except for Pat's Pastured, who had to put a really big investment into it. So I think that you were saying, you know, we need regulation, but we also need to let consumers have a little bit of responsibility in what kind of food that they want to buy. Maine just actually passed a food sovereignty law that gives farmers who are selling food within their towns freedom to not have to go through any of the federal or state laws. So like if I had a cow, I could just sell milk to my neighbors without having to get any permits or processing, and that just, you know, if they feel safe buying it from me, then that's great. So I think that moving forward, that's the way I see.
Yeah, so with those
healthy food
unlevel
system.
playing fields between states, that we're very interested in hearing that and
Yeah.
advocating to level those playing fields. So, and we've talked about a number of issues in manufacturers, for instance, the microbrewers, they're being taxed on their kegs, where Massachusetts and Connecticut don't do it. There's some efforts that we're actually investigating and looking into, is in terms of subsidies that may be available to dairy farmers that they may or may not be taking advantage of, and those type of things, Kate. We really want to hear those, so that we can investigate, and where it makes sense to really push hard to make that happen. So I'm going to kind of do a handoff over there, Steve, but I want to tell two quick stories. One is here, we got Rachel's coconut butter, and Rachel's a young entrepreneur, high school student that is doing goat milk with her goats, and doing soaps and that type of thing. So I was able to, and I'm promoting your idea, Jeff, right, to get out of the state and start looking at things. So we want to do that. So I brought down like 30 bars of soap for the lieutenant governors when I was in Nashville, and they all have a bar of soap from Rachel's, you know, right out there in, you know, in Rhode Island. So, and then she actually sells over through the internet and sells that way. So I think it's just great that the experience that I've had with the farmers, and I just want to just thank them. The hospitality is unbelievable. When you hear that they want you to visit their farm, they want you to visit their farm. They want to show they're very proud of the work that they're doing, and it was just such a joy to kind of get out there and visit everybody. But yeah, we got to promote, and we got to promote, and then we need to drive both legislation locally and the state level and federal level that's going to be helpful to each one of your businesses.
Okay, I just wanted to open this up a little bit, but I just wanted to ask the panel a couple of questions because obviously everybody knows that Benny's is closing, in today's paper that Rainbow Bakery, if they can't find a buyer, that would eventually close. And I found it fascinating how you have multi-generational situations going on there, and if you could maybe enlighten us to how you're getting it done. And I was intrigued with you saying you're already planning for that coming up. And maybe we don't see that so much on the retail side, and I'd like to know what you're doing on the farming side that's making that work.
My dad actually did set up a plan. We met with a lawyer, set up a trust so that it would pass to both my brother and I. Because half the battle of growing a farm, as everybody knows, is when the original owners pass, you'd actually have to spend half the money to buy the farm back.
Right.
So we set it up in a trust that way. And it's worked out so far. My brother's running it, and seems to be no problem. So
that's great.
Don't like saying you have to bring in lawyers.
No.
But you have to bring in lawyers.
Necessary evil sometimes. Yes, Jeff.
I'm in a different situation, and I want to just address what he said. I just did a farm-to-table Wesley Land Trust dinner last weekend. It was wonderful. I've been doing it for years, so I'm all for land trust, but the farmer beware in that it might look too good to be true, and I see in my environment where people go and I'll keep the farm, and in 2 generations I'll long be passed away, and then suddenly it's no longer available for farming. So the fine print in how you transfer your land, you need a lawyer, you need to be careful, you know, buyer beware. I lease from the state of Rhode Island. I have 20-year leases, so it's a little different. We've done a back-of-the-envelope conversation. It will get more complicated. I think most farmers have to take out a private mortgage because it's very difficult to get any sort of serious bank financing because things can go bad very fast. In my previous life, I owned 2 record stores called Looney Tunes, and I sold those through a private mortgage. I held the paper. I got paid. But I think that is a very, very big issue for all of the farmers because you can make it work, it could be doing great, and then suddenly it's taken away by the passing on of a family member.
Sure.
And it's sad.
I remember reading in one of Joel Salatin's books, if you don't want your kids to hate farming, pay them. And I think that I made more on the farm when I was 10 years old than I do now because I somehow talked my dad into paying me more than anybody else. But yeah, I don't know. He raised me to love the farm, and farming's not something you do for money. So yeah.
I feel the same way too. When I was 12, my dad gave me a half acre and said, grow what you want, and I grew sunflowers, and I sold them for $1 a piece, and I think and it was in the same boat, probably richer at 12 than I am now. And I think the other thing is you have to look at passing on a farm differently than other businesses. You can't just divide it equally between 3 children if they're not all interested, because that one person that's going to take that on and want to farm, it won't be able to pay the others back. It's not really an equal playing field. So it's really about, I think, fostering good family communication from the beginning, and fortunately my parents were really good about instilling that in us, and then keeping those conversations going, and then having the help with good legal guidance, and we really found that from that Conservation Law Foundation.
It sounds like many of the farms are diversifying into solar energy as well, but also events being held on farms has been a big issue over the last few years. And I was just wondering what your take is on that.
Everybody wants to go buy their meat at Walmart and then say they want small farms to stay so they can look at them, and they also, don't want them to have events. Making a living as a farmer is hard if you're raising what you're raising well. It's expensive and it's hard work, and like my margins are maybe 20%, and I don't pay the property taxes or any of the bills. So if we want this farm to survive, we need to be able to diversify and have, if we had 3 or 5 weddings a year there, that would pay our property taxes.
Yeah, maybe that's something we need to look at legislatively to allow more of that to continue.
The insurance liability is awesomely bad. I won't do it. I don't even want to take people out on my boat very often.
Hey.
If somebody
You had
gets
me out on
hurt,
your boat.
I know. If somebody gets hurt, it can be.
You didn't have
really,
insurance?
really
Absolutely.
troublesome. I have insurance, but there's no such thing
okay.
as enough if you're an insurance agent.
Right. Right.
So, you know, it's a great idea, but the ramifications of something happening can be really bad.
Basically, a huge portion of what we do is all based on events between our fall festival, the haunted attraction, and whatnot. If we weren't able to do that portion of our business, we probably wouldn't survive. It's basically how we make ends meet. The margins in growing produce, they can be good on good years. They can be bad on other years. But we really need that to bridge that gap and to make it successful for multi-generations.
Right.
There's no way that we could have 3 families making a profit, getting houses, making a living off of this land without that extra piece of revenue.
So my question is, if from an economic development standpoint, if we wanted to dramatically increase farming in the state, what are the barriers in what order? Is it the land? Is it that there's not enough people interested in being farmers? Is it consumer demand? Like, what are the barriers to really driving more farms?
Land in the state of Rhode Island, farmland in the state of Rhode Island, is some of the most expensive, if not the most expensive, in the country. So to go out and buy 50 acres, 25 acres, 10 acres, 5 acres is cost prohibitive. Never mind what you're going to, prepare the land. So if you turn around and you look out at the Confrida farm here, they've got acres and acres of corn. That just didn't happen overnight. That happened over many generations. And the same is true with Christmas trees in our backyard. We plowed or cleared as much land as we could. My father could afford on an annual basis. But when the money ran out, we stopped clearing land. So in my opinion, the cost of land in the state of Rhode Island is cost prohibitive.
Many acres of land in the state of Rhode Island that have been protected either through open space or land trust. And much of that land is very farmable. So I've talked to a couple municipal leaders after visiting places that have had those partnerships, and to say, why don't we look at that land as land that could be used for farming? And so I think that's one role that municipalities can play, is to try to open up that land that they've already conserved because they want that postcard look, and farming is very consistent with that.
Absolutely.
In order to get the number of farmers that, I forget what the stats are, we need like 135,000 new farmers in the next 5 years, but there's only like 1,000 new farmers per year in this country. I think in order to get those kinds of numbers, there has to be a paradigm shift in the way that our society thinks about farming and food, because farming isn't a respected profession to most of society. People think of the dumb farmers when it's really like you have to be smart and resourceful and creative to survive as a farmer. And then, people don't know where their food is coming from. So they go into the grocery store and they see chicken for $1 a pound. Like, that's how much it cost me to get it processed. Pepperonis. And so I think we need to find a way to make farming respected by people again, and then somehow find a way to make people educated about how their food is grown and where it's coming from.
Thank you. Yes?
I'm Doreen Pezzo, and I do agree with you in one respect, but I think it's more misunderstood as far as farming goes. People don't understand that you don't work an 8-hour day. You don't throw seeds in the ground and have the seeds just pop up. There's so much involved, and like you say, they don't want to pay. We sell our own farm fresh eggs, and there again, you ask $4 a dozen, and they say, but why? The chickens are just out there. They're going to lay the eggs. I don't understand it, but they want free-range chickens. They want them to be out there, but they don't understand. So it's very misunderstood what has to go into farming to be anywhere near successful. I think it's respected. I think people love the farmers.
Yeah.
But they should follow us around for about a week.
I think, yeah.
And then they can say what they want to say.
Pass out.
I have a comment. I think it starts with the younger generations in school. And I really think there should be a program in the elementary schools, junior high, high schools, to teach children where the food comes from or where products come from. We make goat milk soap. And we start our day at 8 o'clock in the morning from milking the goats all the way to making the product to selling it at farmers markets. So it's a little bit more pricey. So my daughter, Rachel, educates her friends, her friends' friends, her friends' families. We do these home shows and we teach people that it's important to find out what they're putting on their bodies, what they're eating, to make us healthier and to make us a better society. So I really think it starts with really the younger generation and continue on to the older generation, but we really need to have educational programs in the school where it starts. We've done field trips at our farm with 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds. They didn't even know where eggs came from. You know, they think they come from the supermarket or where the milk comes from. I just think somebody needs to focus on education in schools.
Yeah, I think that was a point Jeff and I were just talking about, and one of the things that is at the Cranston Technical School, we always look beyond the borders. We want to go to the Worcester Technical School, but in the Cranston Technical School, they have a culinary arts program, and they also have an aquaculture program. Now, I don't know who they reach out to, but I'm going to be putting Jeff in touch with them as well, but that's exactly your point. There's a situation, we have a local institution, a great facility, great training, but who are they contacting? Who are they interacting with? How are they going to be? They may be the next farmers. They may buy your farm, Jeff. You never know.
Microsoft, I believe, has a commercial out where they show in the commercial how you don't need to go outside to experience what it's like to be outside. And for the people at this table and myself, I think it's terrible. It's terrible. And I can't change the approach of people, but they need to get out and see what the real world is. And that's what everybody here tries to do with our showing people what we do and living the life.
My name is Richard Lalo, and I'm from Wickford. Started a greenhouse recently in Wickford selling air plants. Pales in comparison to the work you do. I'll never complain about watering the plants again. But part of the program I do, and I'm saying this because I think the responsibility to up the awareness level of people goes across the board to everybody that has a concern about this. And I'll share with you what I'm trying to do there. I starting to host programs that bring in speakers to improve awareness in the community with both the adult population, the local schools and so forth, so that people can understand things and how they connect to the earth. And I think it has to, it's the work of everybody that cares about this to try to do what they can when they can on this kind of thing. The education, I agree with the young lady's comments about a paradigm shift. Sorry, folks. Paradigm shift. Okay. Yeah. And this was, it's really, really important. And I think we all have a job to do with that. And I laud the work you do, and it's important. And I praise the Rhode Islanders because I think we've got a very progressive place in the world as far as local farms. I think we do a good job with that.
Well, thank you so much, and it's been a pleasure. What a great journey that to get out and meet the farm community, and to have great representation here from all over the state. This was meant to be, you know, there's not any one area of the state that's doing this work. And so our goal in our office is to advance Rhode Island, and one of the main goals is to advance small business and increase small business friendliness. So anybody who's listening out there who has an idea, please share it with our office. We're getting ready for the next legislative session and really try to be very proactive to help the business community. So thank you for all listening in, and thank you so much for the audience that was here tonight to kind of share their stories and to participate in this event. Thank you so much.